Good morning, everyone. Let me just quickly share my screen. Thanks for joining the webinar on data marketplaces powered by the OriginTrail Decentralized Knowledge Graph. I'm Jurij. I'm the General Manager of Trace Labs, core developers of OriginTrail. So this project that we're going to introduce has been done within the scope of NGI Atlantic project. Now, just quickly around us as Trace Labs as an organization, what is our purpose? So we're trying to organize humanity's most important assets and making them discoverable, verifiable, and valuable. And we're doing this by moving things from physical to digital, from data to assets, and from Web 2 data silos to the semantic Web 3. Now, in other words, this means that through OriginTrail Decentralized Knowledge Graph, we want to enable people and organizations to organize, discover, and verify anything from physical items to digital items, and of course make them usable, tradable, and understandable. And within the usable and tradable components, of course, this is where the data marketplaces that we're going to talk about later today falls in. And before we move into the NGI Atlantic, so the data marketplaces, just quickly about what is OriginTrail Decentralized Knowledge Graph. So it's the world's first decentralized knowledge graph, and it's essentially a network for exchanging data and value. And by linking data across different data silos, it's driving network effects, meaning that it's adding value to data and turning it into knowledge. It's a combination of two core components, two core technologies, knowledge graphs and blockchains. We're going to talk in the next slide just quickly what each of those components brings to the table. But essentially, by combining these technologies, we've created a fabric for a semantic Web3 that is actually running on already on 1,800 plus nodes globally today. It's the network itself, so the knowledge graph itself has three key characteristics. So it's got integrity, it's blockchain agnostic, so it can connect to multiple blockchains. Currently, it's connecting to Ethereum, XDAI, and Polygon, with an integration with Polkadot upcoming. So it really has all of the key public ecosystems that will be connecting to ensure integrity. Second principle is interoperability, that is based on support of different global data standards, such as the W3C, verifiable credentials, decentralized identifiers, and GS1, for example, EPCIS for supply chain traceability, and of course, other standards as well. And the third, last but not least, of course, a principle is privacy. Which is based on strict data access permissioning, meaning that even though the decentralized knowledge graph uses public blockchain ecosystems to ensure integrity, it still has very strict data access permissioning, meaning that users can decide what they want to share and with whom. And on top of this decentralized knowledge graph is where we then build Web3 applications, such as the data marketplaces we're going to have a look at today. But before having a look at today, just a little bit more around what are knowledge graphs and blockchains, so that we get a little bit of a better understanding as to how the decentralized knowledge graph works. So quickly around knowledge graphs. So knowledge graphs are semantic networks. What does this mean? It means that they enable to move, essentially they enable emergence of knowledge from data by linking different relevant data between each other. And that's where this expression things, not strings, comes from. So it's about really linking data on things together and understanding the context and really moving from raw data to actual knowledge, instead of just having, strings as in just pieces of data that are not interconnected. And these knowledge graphs, these semantic networks, are already heavily in use by organizations who depend on deriving value from data to actually for their existence, such as Google, Facebook, Amazon. So they are using it to extract this this value, about websites, users, products, and it's a very kind of core component, core technology. Now, the thing is that within those organizations, so the knowledge graphs are used in a very Web 2 or centralized way. And this is where blockchains that are trust networks come in by actually bringing trust to data and value exchanges by enabling things such as tamper-proof shared ledger, meaning things are immutable, cannot be changed. Decentralized identities, meaning that you can know who issued what set of data with certainty and at what time with certainty. And then novel concepts such as decentralized finance with smart contracts, asset tokenization with NFTs. So there's a lot of concepts that are bringing a lot of trust to the table, and by combining the knowledge graph technology and component, repurposing it more for Web3, combining it with blockchain technology, we recreated the world's first decentralized knowledge graph, which brings together all of these concepts and enables essentially the use of knowledge graphs in Web3 environments. And this is where, then we come to kind of a conclusion. What can you actually do with the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph? And I'll just quickly go through this. So you can do a lot of things. We can build with high quality verifiable data and understand the semantics. We can publish verifiable claims for any legacy systems. So it's not meant to replace legacy systems, rather work together with them. You can integrate data across Web3 seamlessly. You can easily build any applications, metaverse-ready decentralized applications. So this is one of some data marketplace is one of those applications that we'll have a look at in the next slides. You can discover and crowdsource high-quality data sets if that's something that you need. For example, data on weather patterns or something that is a bit more closed, and then you can actually crowdsource it and get it from the people who actually do this for you, for compensation, of course. And you can tokenize your dynamic assets, meaning that you can actually bring your digital or physical assets into a digital realm and attach knowledge around them that is verifiable at any point in time. So that's briefly around OriginTrail and what it is. Now going into the food data marketplace, which was developed within the scope of NGI Atlantic. So we developed a food marketplace as a new kind of a business model, economic model for sustainable food supply chains, whereby we wanted to enable particularly upstream supply chain partners, such as farmers, to own their data and actually get a part of the gains that the data potentially provides further downstream in the supply chains. Meaning the purpose was also getting a more equitable distribution of gains. We deployed the data marketplace, the food data marketplace, with the Kakaxi IoT device, which is kind of a self-sustaining IoT device, can be placed on a farm or anywhere else. And has 4 or 5 IoT sensors that collect data on temperature, humidity, sunlight, rainfall, and it also collects images essentially that can be turned into a time lapse. So this is something that, especially for if you want to, as a farmer, prove that you have, done raised cattle or produced grain in a certain way, that you can actually prove this and also sell it down to the producers, manufacturers, whoever might be using this data. So the core principles of this new food data marketplace are, of course, in line with the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph. So it's data privacy, its integrity, and its interoperability. So meaning all the data that is collected by the Kakaxi IoT device in our cases is owned by the farmers, and they can then decide to put it on sale and actually benefit from collecting this and be part of the gains that data might actually generate. So that's quickly around the new concept and how it works, what we've done. Where did we actually deploy it? So it was actually deployed globally. Within the NG Atlantic project, we had 3 test beds across the world, one of them being a novel Irish whiskey distillery, Monasterevin, the other one being Arroco cacao in Colombia, so it's cocoa fields, and the Sunlit Solar in Nepal is focusing on essentially production, so smaller farms producing different types of grains, pumpkins, and the likes. So these were our 3 test beds where we deployed the Kakaxi devices and enabled them for the food data marketplace. And it's really has proven kind of to be the whole concept has proven to be a very good innovation platform to validate these new business models and see if these additional revenue streams for the farmers actually is something that is a sustainable, business model. And we've successfully now tested at least with one of the or successfully validated that with at least one of the use cases, so Monasterevin distillery, where we've also been, or we are working towards including that into the data into a broader supply chain context, which we're working on together with them. One last thing around the food data marketplace. So I mentioned before interoperability, which is the core concept, the core driver of, not driver, the core component of OriginTrail, Decentralized Knowledge Graph, and the food data marketplace. And just quickly about those global data standards, right? Because they are important so that not only the data can be, sold in a structured and interoperable way and understood, but also so that it can be included and linked to other supply chain data, such as traceability of products, events in supply chain, other IoT data that might be collected sometime downstream. And that's the power of the knowledge graph, or the centralized knowledge graph, that it enables it to, once the data is purchased, if there is other contextual data or supply chain related data already available, it will connect it to get a whole kind of more end-to-end picture, and that knowledge graph can actually then be built by different data sets. Yeah, so which standards are we using here specifically as we're talking about supply chain and supply chain traceability data? We're talking about GS1, EPCIS, and core business vocabulary as a standard to capture supply chain events. That's the standard that really talks about who, what, when, and why of a supply chain event. We're talking about, so the second standard that is very relevant here is the W3C Web of Things standard, which is a standard to capture IoT data. And as we're having IoT data from 4 or 5 data sets here, this is an important one. Another W3C standard that is relevant from a kind of verification perspective, and that we use to really wrap up all of the claims that are coming from the Kakaxi devices, is actually verifiable credentials, so that all of these claims can be verified and confirmed that there's some, who issued them, which farmer, at what point in time. And we, of course, also have some other standards that I'm not going to go into details of here, but generally just to reiterate the importance of interoperability and the readiness of the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph and food data marketplace mechanism within it for actually for these standards to be deployed and utilized. So what are some of that was on the food data marketplace. That was a very good project that enabled us to test the data marketplace component and mechanisms of OriginTrail, a decentralized knowledge graph. But what are some of the other solutions within which the mechanisms such as the data marketplace can actually be included? Because right now we were talking about food data marketplaces. Of course, this applies not only with the mechanism for data marketplaces, applies not only to food, but it can apply to essentially any type of industry. So all of the use cases that you see here could potentially also have that component included if that was the business case. And just quickly, what are some of the major use cases of or major use cases that are built on top of the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph? First one is Trusted Factory, where we work together with be our partner, British Standards Institution, or BSI, and SCAN to actually utilize the decentralized knowledge graph to verify integrity of security audits for imports into the US. And those imports are done by a group, and those are SCAN members. The largest US retailers that total a yearly revenue of over 2 trillion. And these security audits are very important because they are needed. They're an import criteria for them to be able to import into the US. So by securing these security audits on the decentralized knowledge graph and enabling them to be verified by Customs and Border Protection and other government agencies, that actually facilitates international trade and ensures that it moves as fast as possible, and it has the highest level of trust. Similarly, in rail travel safety, we are focusing on trust, but here, and trust and transparency, but here we're more talking about the safety of rail travel, and by enabling Swiss railways to essentially see the history of the components they're using for rail tracks in Switzerland, by actually linking together linking together data on certain components across multiple suppliers. So Swiss railways and all of their suppliers that are currently in scope actually provide and link that data using OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph. So when something, when Swiss Railways wants to see a history of a component of a railway, such as a rail buffer or a brake or whatever, they can actually see through the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph all the linked data, so all of the history, when was it produced, in what conditions, what were the readings, when was it installed, was it maintained, all of these types of things. So really kind of also setting the stage for predictive maintenance and other novel concepts around AI and machine learning. So that's on the Swiss Railway. Just quickly on the food and beverage traceability, I briefly mentioned the transparency by design solution within the scope of the food data marketplace. So we're talking about this startup Irish distillery Monasterevin, where we also tested part of one of the test beds for the food data marketplace. And with them, we're also working on a food and beverage kind of transparency solution, whereby consumers can scan a bottle of whiskey, and they also see a full trail of what went into the whiskey from the grain all the way to the bottling process. And last but not least, OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph is used in pharmaceuticals. More specifically, it's currently being used as a technology backbone that enables transparency to see how donated medicine that has been donated by large manufacturers via an NGO that donates to over 70 countries globally. How to ensure essentially that those donated products actually reach the intended patients by linking all of the data from different systems, and also actually enabling through a certain mobile application to amend the data that will be then linked and provided in a nice transparent view for the pharmaceutical organizations to actually see and ensure that and have trust that what they donated actually reached or was used for what it was intended for. So that's quickly just on some of the use cases, the larger ones that we're working on. And I think I'll conclude here. I'd like to thank you for joining, Hopefully that was an insightful 25 minutes around how, within NGI Atlantic, the data marketplaces were developed, what they mean, how they can be applied, and of course, if that's something that is of interest, feel free to get in touch through the websites, tracelabs.io, OriginTrail.io, or through Twitter, LinkedIn. And if that's something that your organization could benefit from, we're happy to have a chat. So I think I'll close here. Martina, thanks everyone, and have a nice day.